is. And so many of us who meet first at school have been friends for life. And many of them are here tonight, and I thank you for your unwavering support for me personally, and also for your support for our cause. I'm proud of much that the Labour government has achieved: the minimum wage, the child tax credit, the NHS renewed, more police officers, 500,000 children out of poverty, 2 million more jobs than in 1997. And I'm proudest of all to have been returned as a Member of Parliament for Fife, now 7 elections in a row, by the people who know me best, who I am, who I stand for, and what I went into politics to achieve. I entered Parliament to fight for jobs, and that's what, even through a global financial storm, I have been doing. I entered Parliament to improve schools and the opportunities of young people to get apprenticeships and to go to college and university and get a degree, and that's what I have done and am doing. I entered Parliament to fight against discrimination and dignity, and for dignity and equality, and to deliver dignity for older people, and that's what I've been and I continue to do. And I entered Parliament to support our wonderful armed forces and to ensure that this country fulfills its obligations to the poorest countries of the world, and that is what I am doing. And I entered Parliament to save and renew our NHS, and that is exactly what we have done. But this moment, I want to speak directly to the people of Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath, to thank so many of you: Alec Rowley, my agent; Marlon Livingston, Member of the Scottish Parliament; Peter Livingston; Helen Eadie, Member of the Scottish Parliament; and Bob Eadie. I want to thank all our councillors and all our party members. And I also want to thank my wife, Sarah, for her love and for her support, and for her legendary campaigning skills too. Above all, I want to thank the people of Cowdenbeath and Kirkcaldy for returning me once more as your Member of Parliament. The outcome of this country's vote is not yet known, but my duty to the country coming out of this election is to play my part in Britain having a strong, stable and principled government, able to lead Britain into sustained economic recovery, and able to implement our commitments to far-reaching reform to our political system, upon which there is a growing consensus in our country. So tonight, thanks to your support, I enter the 27th year of my service as Member of Parliament, and thanks to your votes, with more support than ever before in the time I have been a candidate. I am deeply honoured. Thank the people of Cowdenbeath, Kirkcaldy and all the surrounding communities. I will not let you down. Thank you very much.
Gordon Brown speaking of Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath, his constituency where his majority is well up by 5,000 or so, but making a speech that sounded to me almost like a valedictory speech, listing all the achievements that he said he was proud of, and thanking the people who knew him best in the constituency, and saying the outcome of the election is not yet known, but his duty lay in achieving stable government. But I got the feeling he was pretty well wrapping up his career as leader of the Labour Party.
I thought his face, David, I thought more importantly his eyes and the eyes of his wife Sarah spoke of defeat. They spoke of disappointment. They did not speak of a man believing that he will still be Prime Minister, but he was careful to use that form of words, wasn't he? The outcome's not yet known, but it's my duty, he said, to play my part in creating a strong and stable government. So at least allowing that if there is a hung parliament that allows him to look at forming a coalition government, or perhaps stepping aside to allow someone else to form a coalition government between Labour and the Liberal Democrats, that he now says it's his duty to do so. But there was nothing in what he said or his demeanour that suggested to me that he believes he's going to continue for very long as Prime Minister of this country.
Andrew Marr is with the David Cameron camp. Did you hear what the Prime Minister said, Andrew? What do you make of it?
Yes, David, I did hear that, and David Cameron is not very far away from me. Will have been watching it as well, and I think will have been focusing on those words about it. Gordon Brown saying it's his duty to lead the country out of the recession. A pretty clear hint there, and we've had much more than hints on the programme all evening from other Labour figures, that if they possibly can, they'd like to do some sort of deal with the Liberal Democrats. Now, that would arouse a sense of outrage, I think, in the Conservative camp, the people around David Cameron, who feel that as things go at the moment, they are on course to clearly win this election. And the country would then be in an incredibly difficult position if we had two different leaders both trying to form governments. That embroils, of course, Buckingham Palace and all the rest of it. Now, we're not there yet, but we are in a position where I think the Conservative camp, David Cameron's people, are watching this result by result, and even at this stage in the morning aren't really able to call this and tell what's happening. Gordon Brown was not conceding defeat quite yet. David Cameron has so far not come out and claimed victory. There has not been an election like this in my lifetime, and it's quite clear that it's going to go on for quite a long time yet. I think if David Cameron was able to come out and vent his feelings, it would be that by every sort of standard of ordinary morality, he was winning this election, he deserves to be Prime Minister, and yet, at this stage, he can't say that's going to happen.
And Andrew, do you think that Gordon Brown, as we've been talking about at this table, Vernon Bognar has been saying, and I think Peter Hennessy was saying, that Gordon Brown has an absolute right, as indeed Ted Heath did in February '74, to try and stay in office as Prime Minister if he can by putting together some sort of agreement or coalition or support mechanism or whatever with the Liberal Democrats?
Well, the constitutional position is that he remains Prime Minister until it's clear that he cannot command a majority of the House of Commons. So if he lifts up the phone at some point in the course of the morning to Nick Clegg, and they do some kind of deal, and he feels that Libs and Lab together can form a majority, then he has the right to carry on. The problem is that if the country seems to have rejected Gordon Brown as Prime Minister and has elected a large number of Conservative MPs, clearly the largest party in Parliament, then there will be a sense of natural right versus constitutional right.
And of course, the difference is that Ted Heath had more votes, more popular votes, even though he had fewer seats in the House of Commons than Labour. He actually had 250,000 or so more people voting for him. It doesn't look on these figures as though Labour's going to be able to claim that.
For once, David, we are in a position.
Right. One other very interesting. Sorry. One other very interesting parallel I should say, is that of course Ted Heath was asked by the then Liberal leader Jeremy Thorpe whether he could deliver voting reform. And he said, the most I can offer is a Speaker's Conference and a vote of the House of Commons. And that was not enough for the Liberals then, and I suspect whoever they were dealing with, it wouldn't be enough for the Liberal Democrats now.
We think we're about to get a declaration from Tooting, Wandsworth Town Hall, where Tooting and Battersea are all having their counts. Let's just go up on the platform there and see.
Do you think? No, I'm a bit short, I think.
Oh, there's some pause while they check things here. The Conservatives gained Battersea incidentally. Let's just see that result while we wait.
Mr. Vickery, yes. Again, I seem to be missing a candidate. But
okay, let's just see the Battersea result, can we? Can we put that on the screen? Thank you very much. Conservative gain in Battersea. 6.5% swing to the Conservatives.
Liberal Democrats, 7,509. Mark Adrian Clark, the Conservative Party candidate, 19,514. Susan John Richards, Independent, 190. Sadiq Aman Khan, the Labour Party candidate, 22,000. Can I finish, please? 22,038. Strachan David MacDonald, UK Independence Party, 624. Shireen Hanouk Paul, the Christian Party, 171. Albert Roy Vickery, Green Party, 609. I therefore declare that Sadiq Aman Khan is elected to serve as a Member of Parliament for the constituency of Tooting. Congratulations.
So Sadiq Khan, who's been there since 2005, is a transport minister, attends cabinet, the first Asian to attend cabinet, and the shout you may have heard was "Yes, we can," a bowdlerization of Obama's slogan, "Yes, we can." They're offered it again. Here are the results, if you just want to see those.
Can I begin by...
This is majority, 2,524.
Thank you.
It's down by about that amount, actually, since last time. The change since 2005.
In Tooting, such a...
Labour up 1%, the Conservatives up 8%, the Liberal Democrats way down 5%.
The media, from the various calls I've had today.
What's intriguing is these different swings we're getting. 3.6% swing to the Tories there in Tooting, nothing like enough for them to become a majority government. We've seen some swings up at 9%, we've seen others, and this was just outside the range of the seats that they need to get in order to have a majority. But if, as we've seen in certain areas of the southwest, the Liberal Democrats have done rather better at holding on to their seats against the Tory advance, they need to get seats like this in order to have a chance.
Did you spot the difference between the swing in Battersea and the swing in Tooting?
I forget the figure. I think it was about 6% in Battersea from memory. I haven't got the figure on me, but it was significantly higher.
6.5%, yes.
Significantly higher.
Let's go to South London with Emily.
Interesting, when we were listening to the count, it sounded by the number of votes as if the Conservative candidate had taken this. He hasn't. Sadiq Khan, a junior transport minister, has kept his position. Let me show you what that does. So Labour up just a fraction. The Conservatives have made these gains, but as Nick was saying, just not enough. And very interesting, Peter, you and I had the same reaction. The turnout must have been huge.
I think the turnout's up about 9%, 10 percentage points. Turnout's up almost everywhere, but not by this amount. Now look, we've had, I think, 4 Labour marginals where we've got the figures. One, Kingswood, had a huge swing, 9.5%. The others, Battersea 6%, Telford 6%, now 3.5% here. It may be because it's a big ethnic minority vote. Some signs, Labour seats with a high ethnic minority vote, a smaller swing. But at the moment, 3.6. But the variety of swings, Nick Robinson was saying, we're going to be hours before we know really whether the Tories are merely the largest party or whether they're close to an outright majority. Very varied swings all over the place.
OK, the other one we'll be looking at, time to come, is Ipswich. Another junior transport minister there, Chris Moll. A similar swing needed, around 6%. Will they manage that one, or will it be the same result as in Tooting?
Let's just see Guildford, which we've had in while Emily was talking there. The Guildford result, Conservative hold, number 1 in the Liberal Democrats' target. It was a very tight thing between Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. 22,000, but just a majority of 89 at the last election in 2005. But the Conservatives have held on there, and here's the change. Conservative vote in Guildford goes up 9%, Liberal Democrats go down 4%, Labour down 5%. Turnout, 72%. They're carrying out to decent turnouts like we used to have in the 60s and 70s.
There's just the beginning of a hint that this exit poll that looks so odd about the Liberal Democrats may not be wrong, actually, because we are seeing these drops, but we're seeing them in seats where we get increased turnout. And is it perhaps because people thought this is a two-way battle for number 10, and they came out in large numbers in that direction?
Pictures of Gordon Brown and his wife just leaving the count after the result that we heard in Kirkcaldy there.
One would have thought in a seat like Guildford that Labour voters would have swung very heavily to the Liberal Democrats to enable the Liberal Democrats to gain that seat from the Conservatives. It's a very disappointing result for them, as City of Durham is.
Let's join Jeremy Paxman.
Well, I'm joined now by Ed Miliband, who's at his count in Doncaster. Ed Miliband, David Blunkett was saying to me a few minutes ago that he thought the Conservatives were going to end the night with an overall majority. What does it feel like to you?
I've no idea, really, to be completely honest. I mean, it's one of these cases where the people have spoken, but we don't quite know exactly what they've said, and it's going to be much later in the morning before we know. I think if your exit poll is right, two things come forward, I think, in my view. First of all, we need a stable government, and we will have to see who can form a stable government. And of course, Gordon Brown, as the Prime Minister, and the constitutional position is clear, gets to have the first crack at that. And secondly, people have voted in their majority for reform of our voting system. And this is essentially the first time in 100 years, I think, that that's really happened. Ourselves and the Liberal Democrats both clearly committed to that. That cannot be swept under the carpet at this election, as Peter Mandelson was saying earlier on. But let's see whether your exit poll turns out to be true, because we've got a huge variation, obviously, across the country.
It is hugely complicated, as you say. But your judgment is that it is okay for Gordon Brown to soldier on, even though he has no overall majority.
Yeah, we have a very simple system, a parliamentary system in this country. If one party gets a majority, the leader of that party becomes the Prime Minister. If no party gets a majority, then it is up to the parties that are in the House of Commons to try and form a majority between them, and the Prime Minister gets the first go at that. That's just very simple. And to be honest, George Osborne starting to say, you know, that somehow David Cameron should have the first opportunity to do that, or whatever, is completely irrelevant in my view, because the position is very clear.
So you're with your brother, it's Brown or bust, are you?
I wouldn't quite put it that way. Let's see what the result of the election is. I will make one point to you, Jeremy, which I think nobody has made, although they may have made this point, which is that I think one of the reasons you're seeing in our marginal seats a lower swing, as far as I can tell, than in some of the safer seats, Labour or Tory, is frankly, we have foot soldiers on the ground who have been getting out the vote, and I want to pay tribute to them tonight. And basically, in those seats, the foot soldiers, where we've held on, have beaten the Ashcroft money. And that is a very significant thing that's happened in those seats tonight.
I've got to go back to David Dimbleby. David.
Well, we've had 57 declarations in now. We've got a current swing from Labour to Conservative of 3.3%, but it's much altered by results we've had from Northern Ireland and from Scotland, I'm told. So I don't know what the swing is settling at, if indeed it is going to settle. We know this is the most extraordinary election. Everybody's at sixes and sevens about who's doing what. We heard David Blunkett saying Labour had lost it. We don't know who's won it. We shall see. Let's have a summary of where we are at the moment, can we, Fiona? If you can make sense, if you can make good sense of this chaos.
I'll certainly do my best. We've had 57 seats so far. We've got 593 to go. So far tonight, the big story is the extraordinary scenes at polling stations around the UK where hundreds of people have been unable to vote. The Electoral Commission said it will conduct a review after angry voters complained of being shut out from polling stations, which couldn't cope with the number of people who turned up. Police were called into some areas when voters refused to move on. In Wavertree, the polling station simply ran out of ballot papers.
Already had the queues, no one bothered to get more staff in, to get more organised.
Frustration and anger in Manchester's Fallowfield. Staff couldn't cope. It cost hundreds of people their vote.
We're being disenfranchised, and that's not on. This could make all the difference between somebody losing or winning.
Voters in Nick Clegg's constituency waited and waited. Many were turned away.
We take it very seriously, and it's terribly undemocratic. I think everybody's very angry.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
The returning officer blamed a large number of students turning up without their polling card. Extra staff were sent, but it was too late.
It should not have happened. We will learn from it. We cannot turn the clock back, regrettably. We could not extend beyond 10 p.m. Once the problem occurred, we had no remedy open to us.
Pictures emerging of polling stations being caught out by a high voter turnout and too few staff. Voters were locked out in Ealing in West London and here in Leeds. The Electoral Commission said it was cause for serious concern.
Clearly we're going to look at this. Clearly Parliament will want to look at this, and it may well be that the law will need to change.
Already there are suggestions of a legal challenge to results where voters were turned away. Philippa Young, BBC News.
Well, we've had the first big upset of the evening, first political scalp. The Democratic Unionist Party leader Peter Robinson has lost his seat in East Belfast. The Northern Ireland First Minister, who's held the seat since 1979, was ousted by a candidate from the Alliance Party. The result follows the political scandal which surrounded Mr Robinson and his wife early this year. Well, hundreds of seats still to go, but our exit poll is suggesting we may be heading for the first hung parliament since 1974, with no party having an overall majority. The picture should get clearer as more results come in. The night is yet young, but at the moment, this is the current state of the parties. Labour there has just gone up one, with 30 seats so far. Conservatives with 14, Lib Dem on 4, other parties with 11. How the city reacts to the election result will be crucial to Britain's economic recovery. In an unprecedented move, the bond markets have opened within the last half hour to allow traders the chance to respond quickly to the results as they come in. Bond prices have firmed up and the pound is up by about a cent against the dollar. Some analysts are suggesting investors seem to be betting on a Conservative majority. And I should tell you that as well as following us live here in the studio, you can also check every detail and follow live updates from your constituency right through to the final result online at bbc.co.uk/election. So tonight, extraordinary, unprecedented scenes at polling stations as some people were turned away without being able to vote, and the Electoral Commission says there will be a thorough review.
Thanks very much, Fiona. Let's just have a look at one or two more results we've had in. Blaenau Gwent. Labour have gained, you might say gained back Blaenau Gwent from People's Voice. There was a great row there over the years, by-election in 2006, because Labour tried to impose, we've got Newbury up there, but let me just finish on talking about Blaenau Gwent, because Labour tried to impose a candidate, and the Labour candidate stood as an independent and held it. Well, that has now ended. Labour's taken it. Anyway, let's go on to Newbury now. Conservative hold in Newbury. Liberal Democrats in second place, David Rendell. And the Liberal Democrat vote falls by as much as the Conservative vote rises. The majority was 12,000 before, and it's up 8,700 or so. The Conservative hold there. Gedling. Labour hold on to Gedling in Nottinghamshire. Vernon Coker re-elected there. Schools Minister, his majority goes down by 2,500 or so. And there's the figures, down 6%. Conservatives flatline, Liberal Democrats go up 2%, BNP up 3%. They weren't there before, so that's a phony increase. It's just what they've got.
David,
turnout 68%.
Forgive me, that result will cheer up the Labour Party. That was 92nd on the Tory list. We keep reminding you there are 116 seats they have to get a majority. That was 92nd. And the Tories have failed to get it and failed pretty miserably indeed in their effort to get it.
Are you taking a bet now on the hung parliament?
I'm not taking a bet on anything.
Well, I'm not taking a bet
at the moment. But yes, it seems to me
a professional bet on a hung parliament.
You know what I mean is the results
change hands.
Are so varied. It's hard to say. But
yes.
It seems to me there isn't a pattern here that would give confidence to the Tories they get a majority. There are 10 Tory targets in the East Midlands. That was an important one for them, and they haven't got it.
Yes.
And the evidence, interestingly, David, is that when you leave England, you go to Wales and Scotland, the Tories are performing much, much worse. Now, they had no great hopes in Scotland of gaining seats, but they really did have hopes in Wales. And the evidence we've got today shows their vote share is just not doing enough to get them those seats.
The swing we're getting from Labour to Conservatives in England so far is 6.7%. It's way down at 3 or something, isn't it?
6.7% is on the cusp.
Over the UK, it's 3%.
If it were the UK as a whole, of being enough to get them a majority. But across the UK as a whole, they haven't got it.
OK, let's go boating with Andrew.
Well, the wheel is still lit, the party's still in full swing, and I'm joined by Kirsty Alsop, Chris Addison and Shappi Khorassandi. Welcome to you. If this is Mr. Cameron's night, what job will you take in a Cameron administration?
I wouldn't work for the government, I'd rather fly to the moon. I have a perfectly good job. We have enough people working for the government.
You would turn down David Cameron if he was Prime Minister?
I would turn down David Cameron. There are enough people working for the government at the moment. We don't need any more.
But you're happy to see him elected, if he has been.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see him elected.
And he might not be.
I think he has been.
Gordon Brown may still be Prime Minister.
I think David Cameron has been elected. I'm very happy to see him elected, but I think that we need fewer government jobs, so I would not take a job from David Cameron.
All right. Chris Addison, when the Gillian Duffy moment happened, the down point of Mr. Brown's campaign. Everyone said it's straight out of the thick of it, was it?
Somebody said to me today, Simon Blackwell, one of the writers, said that somebody had messaged him saying the only way that the thick of it could be more realistic would be every time something happened, someone should go up to Malcolm and say, this is just like the thick of it, because it does seem to happen a lot. It was a real low point, but I think particularly a low point for the press, who kind of shut up shop for 48 hours and failed to report on, something incredibly important.
I wonder
economic
if your
figures.
script writers would even have come up with a script like that.
Do you know what? Constantly, we do things where we say this must be beyond the realms of anything actually that could happen, and then it happens. It's like we're predicting things. Maybe we should start predicting our own, rich success.
What are you thinking?
Like the other two candidates hadn't said worse stuff when they got into a cab. You know what? I don't think that the other two main candidates gave enough of a hard time to Brown about that, because they were just going, phew, thank goodness for our technicians.
Are you so sure that it is a Conservative victory? Downing Street saying that they will look to form a coalition.
The Queen says she won't see anyone before 1 p.m. I think by 1 p.m. tomorrow. No, that is
She wants to lie in. They've been like this all night, so I'm going to leave them just to talk, because general elections are always great times for cartoonists. And in this country, we've got some of the greatest cartoonists in the world, and we've got one with us tonight. Let's see what he's got. My old colleague from my Sunday Times days, Gerald Scarfe. Gerald, what have you got for us?
Well, this is the first contender. It's Gordon Brown. He's got an albatross around his neck, which you know is everything from the economy to Mrs. Duffy. Then I've had a go at Nick Clegg here, who's walking on water.
That was after the first debate.
That was after the first debate. Even the fish says he's amazing. And then, but people on water, you have to know that things like that can happen.
And that's the way it's been going a little bit tonight.
It's going that way a little bit tonight.
Though maybe not as bad as the exit poll suggested.
We see. And then, of course, Mrs. Cameron is expecting, and so is Mr. Cameron. Great expectations. He's expecting a great result.
He's pregnant as well as his wife. Gerald, these look fantastic. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That's it from the boat. We hope to see you later, but let's go back to the studio.
Thanks, Andrew. Let's go down to the West Country and to Exeter. Ben Bradshaw, Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. It's his constituency.
792. Bradshaw, Benjamin Peter James, the Labour Party candidate, 19,942. Crawford Keith Montgomery, the UK Independence Party, 1,930. Farmer Robert David, British National Party, 673. Foster Hannah Margaret, the Conservative Party candidate, 17,221. Gail Christopher George, the Liberal Party, 1,108. Oakes Graham John, Liberal Democrat, 10,581. And I do hereby declare that Benjamin Peter James Bradshaw is duly elected.
Ben Bradshaw holds on to Exeter. He's been there since '97. Gay MP, who in his first battle said he was gay and had an opponent from the Conservative Party who tried to defeat him on those grounds, but he's been safely there. His majority is down 5,000, 6,000 or so from last time, but nevertheless he's there. Swing from Labour to the Conservatives, 6%, just a little bit on the low side for the Tory ambitions to be fulfilled in Exeter. Turnout, incidentally, up there by 3% and a bit like everywhere else. Now, we were going to get a result from Dunfermline and West Fife. Labour have held Dunfermline and West Fife. But I don't know if we can put that one up. I don't think we can, perhaps. But the majority has been cut. This was one that the Liberal Democrats took at a by-election in 2005, and then it was taken back tonight, or yesterday, I should say, by Thomas Doherty for Labour, Dunfermline and West Fife. So let's have a look at Scotland. We know that the Tories are in difficulty in Scotland. And we know that the swing to the Tories is as opposed to in England. But Jeremy has perhaps a more elegant way of putting it. Jeremy.
Well, I'll try, David. Let's have a look at the map, first of all, coloured in as it was left by the last general election in 2005. And let's isolate Scotland. And as we were saying earlier on, of course, it looks from the air as if it's all Liberal Democrat and SNP because of the sheer size of their constituencies. But actually, it is hugely Labour in strongholds around Glasgow and Edinburgh and the cities, so the red is dominant in Scotland. We've had some results in. I've coloured them into the map for you. So you can see here, Mick Campbell re-elected there and Gordon Brown there. But it's worth us taking a look at the general picture in Scotland, the seats that were won at the last general election. Come over to our data table and I could show them to you. So, 41 seats for Labour, 11 seats for the Lib Dems, 6 Scottish Nationalists and 1 Conservative. Share of the vote is the key thing here. Have a look at this from the last general election. 40% for Labour, a country mile ahead. Liberal Democrats 23%, SNP on 18%, and Conservatives on 16%. So with 41 seats in Scotland, Labour hugely dominant. Now, of course, since this election in 2005, you've had the 2007 Holyrood elections and the SNP coming through and effectively winning them, becoming a minority government in Scotland. But it's just a reminder of the battle Labour's opponents need here. If we have a look at swing, I'll show you what's going on in Scotland. We heard Nick Robinson earlier saying that swing to the Conservatives was really happening in England, but outside it was a very different story. We'll have a look at this. We'll highlight the Scottish constituencies on the swingometer there, and let's have a look at the swing in Scotland. Now remember, the national exit poll gave us a swing of 5.5% to the Conservatives. What's happening in Scotland? Let's take a look. It's actually a swing to Labour here, 0.9% to Labour. Now it takes them close to Dumfriesshire, which is the Conservatives' only seat in Scotland. David.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Let's just have a look. We've had one result in while Jeremy is speaking from Glasgow East. Let's hear this. Glasgow East, which was taken in a by-election by the SNP in 2008.
In Glasgow East constituency,
so the SNP will be trying to hold on this.
That the total
John
number
Mason
of votes
is currently the MP, or was it before dissolution.
Was as follows. Francis Curran, Scottish Socialist Party, 454 votes. Margaret Patricia Curran, Scottish Labour Party, 19,797 votes. Joseph T. Finney, British National Party, 677 votes. Amira Khan, Scottish Conservative and Unionist, 1,453 votes. John Mason, Scottish National Party, SNP, 7,957 votes. Arthur Misty Thackeray, UK Independence Party, 209 votes. Kevin Ward, Scottish Liberal Democrats, 1,617 votes. And I declare that Margaret Patricia Curran is elected to serve in the United Kingdom Parliament as a member for the Glasgow East constituency.
So a good lively reception in Glasgow to the news for every candidate, as a matter of fact. But Margaret Curran takes it. It's interesting, this was a seat that when John Mason won it in a by-election, it rocked Gordon Brown's leadership for a bit because it was so extraordinary that the SNP would take a seat from Labour. But anyway, they've taken it back. Majority 11,800. Let's just see the change from the national result in 2005. SNP up 8%, Labour up 1%, Liberal Democrats down 7%. So that doesn't show the by-election, of course. That's the raw figures. Right, let's join... Oh, hold on a second. Yes,
Just
Nick.
a brief thought. Glasgow East, you may recall, was the by-election that followed the great row about the 10p tax, which caused Gordon Brown such trouble there was even a possibility he'd lose his job as leader of the Labour Party. A crisis, he said it was a mistake. So I think, in a sense, not that surprising that Labour have gone back in that constituency. What's interesting, again, is look at those figures. You're seeing the Liberal Democrats lose huge amounts of support, the Tories lose support, Labour just gain a bit. Remember, of course, the SNP are the government. They're the incumbents in Scotland, and they are making difficult decisions, which is easy to campaign against.
The Labour vote is holding up well in Scotland, and the Conservatives aren't making great advances in Wales either. That may not matter too much for their chances of forming a government, because there simply aren't that many target seats in Scotland and Wales. There just aren't too many marginals. What they'll be more worried about is a seat in Gedling in the North Midlands, which required a 4.9% swing to gain it, and the Conservatives failed to do that. They'll be much more worried about a seat like Gedling, which they failed to win.
Good. Thank you very much. Let's join Jeremy Paxman.
Thank you very much, David. Well, we've now got two further members of the House of Lords. Procession of Lords tonight, Lord Reynolds, Lord Fortney. But I will start with you, Saeeda Varsi. You're not doing very well.
I think we are. I think we've
only
had
gained
some
3 seats.
We haven't had a lot of announcements yet. If you look at, I'm going to have to refer to this. We've just apparently gained Loughborough on a 5.5% swing. We had a 7% swing. We held Guildford, but we had a 7% swing to us from the Liberal Democrats. If you look at the pattern that's emerging over the evening, there clearly appears to be a swing to us both from the
Torbay, you
Liberal
haven't won
Democrats.
Tooting, you haven't won Gelding. I mean, you know, these were all target seats.
Yeah, let's look at the figure, the number that they were on the target list. If you look at the ones that were right up there on the target list, we are taking them. But if you also look at the general swing, and I think that's important, Jeremy, there's a swing to us from the Labour Party and there's a swing to us from the Liberal Democrats.
But to get an overall majority, you needed to take those seats, and you haven't.
Well,